Right in the heart of Moscow, a $5 billion luxury icon was suddenly shaken by a Ukrainian UAV. Will this proud fortress stand, or will it collapse in the blink of an eye? 7:29 a.m., the Arctic sky lit up. Russian missiles streaked low over the ground, crossing 600 miles of icy airspace, straight into the Dachi radar cluster. The first strike was not a warning, but a visual break. In the blink of an eye, the Ukrainian eyes exploded, opening the battle with deadly blindness. Ukraine immediately launched a counterattack. 20 suicide UAVs, laden with explosives and jamming equipment, swooped low to the ground, targeting a single weak point, the Belgorod Dome radar and control center. If that heart stopped beating, the entire Russian air defense network would be a corpse standing in the air. The battle escalated dramatically. Overhead, Ukrainian Su-27S carrying AGM-88 HARMs locked onto the signals. Within minutes, the S-300 and Buk radars around Kursk exploded like bloody fireworks. Fire and smoke filled the sky, and the Russian control screens showed only one thing: despair. Moscow seemed as solid as steel, but from the darkness, a Ukrainian stealth UAV crawled close to the roof, slipped under the radar arc, and suddenly disabled the laser guidance turret on top of the telecommunications tower. The door that seemed to be closed suddenly opened wide. A narrow gap, but enough to turn the capital's impregnable shield into a tattered shirt. While the Russian system was confused by electronic decoys, Ukraine made a fatal cut. The low-flying missile crashed straight into the communication hubs and sensor clusters on the roof of the NDMC. The antennas, the pride of defense, were destroyed in the sea of fire. At that moment, the Russian command brain lost its eyes and ears, sinking into blind chaos. But the decisive blow was not over yet. The UGV Zeus, as compact as an ATV, slid into the tunnels under NDMC, waiting for the golden moment. A sharp explosion ripped apart the main antenna array, sending power and data cables flying into the sky. All communication nerve lines were severed in an instant, turning the command fortress into a silent building. Not stopping there, these cheap and stealthy but powerful machines continue to attack and destroy the Russian command center. Let's watch. Subscribe to the channel now to become the fastest and most up-to-date news. This was not a surprise strike, but the result of a seamlessly coordinated campaign between technology, human effort, and cold patience. Every decision carried meticulous strategic calculation, each coordinate confirmed and cross-verified through multiple layers of reconnaissance. Not a sound, not a signal warned of what was coming. Only a suffocating silence lingered, like the moment before a storm explodes. And within that silence, Ukraine wound up a thunderous blow, a strike powerful enough to shake the entire Russian command structure to its core. In the veil between midnight and dawn, the moment when human instinct relaxes most and surveillance systems operate at their weakest, Ukraine launched an attack of ultimate strategic precision. From hidden launch sites, a swarm of strike UAVs, pre-programmed with exact coordinates, silently lifted off the ground and pierced into the darkness, carrying a single mission to wipe out Russia's command center. These were no ordinary reconnaissance drones. They carried artificial intelligence, GPS with anti-jamming capability, and autonomous strike mechanisms powerful enough to pierce through even the densest air defenses. Flying at ultra-low altitudes, exploiting terrain and radar blind spots, they drifted like ghosts without leaving a trace. In that silence, every second was a step closer to Russia's military nerve center. No air defense battery reacted, no warning light flashed. Ukraine didn't just launch an attack, they delivered a chilling message: we can appear anytime, anywhere, and no one can stop us. Just minutes after the UAVs breached the tightly guarded airspace, a chain of violent explosions erupted, tearing apart the stillness of the night. The first strike slammed directly into the command center, home to communication systems and battle coordination boards. Shockwaves rippled through the entire compound, obliterating radio equipment and collapsing part of the building's structure. Russian commanders in the area were struck at the most unexpected moment, unable to even issue an evacuation order. The next blow crashed into the technical block, the very heart of tactical data storage and the hub controlling artillery fire. Flames erupted like a volcano, and a thick black column of smoke spiraled upward, swallowing the sky. Russian soldiers fled in panic, many trapped beneath the burning rubble, screaming in desperate agony. The local air defense system only managed to react when it was already too late. The UAVs had completed their mission and withdrawn safely. The entire raid lasted just a few short minutes, but its shockwaves would echo for days. A critical command post was leveled, the battlefield coordination network left in total paralysis, and Russia's faith in its so-called impenetrable defenses shattered in silence. Immediately after the lightning raid, the entire command apparatus in the targeted zone plunged straight into chaos. All communication channels between the forward command post and frontline combat units were completely severed, turning the battlefield into an information blackout. The chaos quickly spread to surrounding areas, where outposts and logistics facilities were forced to hastily evacuate both personnel and equipment. Fear crept into every group of soldiers, not because of the UAV's raw firepower, but because of their cold precision and near-total surprise. From what seemed like a small raid, Ukraine triggered a chain reaction, crippling Russia's entire battlefield control network within just the first few hours. After the UAV strike left Russia's command post reeling and its defenses in chaos, Ukraine did not hesitate. They immediately unleashed a bolder move. Fighter jets suddenly took off, diving straight toward the Russian military base. And then, An unthinkable twist erupted, shocking everyone who witnessed it. At exactly 5:45 a.m. on May 26th, a Ukrainian Air Force pilot tightened his harness inside the cockpit of an aging MiG-29, a Soviet-era fighter never intended for the mission he was about to undertake. Strapped beneath its wings were French precision-guided bombs, linked to American GPS satellites and steered by improvised Ukrainian software, an unlikely fusion of cutting-edge tech, makeshift ingenuity, and unshakable faith. As the MiG roared down the runway, the pilot knew he carried more than weapons. He bore a mission unprecedented in the war's history, a direct strike against the ultra-secret base of the FSB. Russia's most feared security agency. No one had ever dared target this site before, shrouded in layer upon layer of defenses, long regarded as an untouchable, absolute no-go zone. To reach the target, he was forced to skim treetop level, dodging every radar, before suddenly climbing to 5,000 meters to release the bombs, a reckless maneuver that exposed the entire aircraft to Russia's air defense net. With less than 20 seconds to strike and escape, all he carried was raw courage, a razor-thin chance, and an ironclad belief that the impossible was about to be etched into modern warfare's history. At 5:58, the pilot pushed the throttle, and the twin Klimov RD-33 turbo engines roared, hurling the MiG-29 down the runway under a load far beyond its design limits. In the fading dawn light, the Frankenstein fighter lifted off, armed with French engineering, American satellites, and Ukraine's unbreakable will, heading straight for the beating heart of the FSB's power. At exactly 6:15, the MiG skimmed just 50 meters above the ground, so low its exhaust flattened wheat fields and sent flocks of birds scattering in panic. The pilot strained his eyes as he weaved past power lines, cell towers, and even lone rooftops. It was a suffocating, exhausting flight, but the only path to evade the blanket of Russian radar guarding the border. With the S-400 capable of hitting targets from 400 kilometers away, even the slightest exposure meant certain death. But today, the Earth's curvature was the pilot's ally. At an altitude of just 50 meters, radar could only see about 25 kilometers ahead. He remained a ghost, but in just 3 more minutes, he would have to climb, fire, and reveal himself completely. The target coordinates glowed on an iPad. Yes, an iPad duct taped to the cockpit. The destination, the FSB headquarters in Glovo, Belgorod, just 5 kilometers from the border. Not a military depot, but Russia's intelligence cradle. The successor to the KGB, the same organization that had unleashed hundreds of operations against Ukraine. Two French AASM-guided bombs hung beneath the wings, symbols of hope, risk, and paradox. NATO munitions paired with an old Soviet fighter bound together by incompatible technology, patched with local software, plastic zip ties, and a single prayer. At 6:22, the Ukrainian pilot pulled back hard, the MiG-29 banking at a 45-degree angle and shooting skyward. G-forces crushed his body as the altimeter spun, 1,000 meters, 2,000, 5,000. Then the radar warning blared like a death knell. The entire Western Russian air defense grid had locked on. The 92 N6 radar of the S-400 system in Belgorod instantly tracked the MiG, calculating trajectory, speed, altitude, and heading. In just seconds, missiles would be leaving their launchers. But the pilot held one lethal advantage: surprise. The Russians never imagined that an aging Soviet fighter could carry French smart bombs, guided by American GPS, and charge straight at one of their most sensitive sites. They had less than 45 seconds to react, while the entire defense system was built to counter traditional strikes, not this insane, unthinkable scenario. At 5,000 meters, the duct-taped iPad in the cockpit lit up with the optimal launch coordinates. The pilot clenched his fist and pressed the button. 2 AASM bombs dropped free. Plunging away. Instantly, he yanked the MiG into a brutal World War I-style dive, trading altitude for speed, skimming the Earth like an arrow through the wind, escaping the dense web of Russian radar. Behind him, the two smart bombs, masterpieces of French engineering, ignited their rocket motors, racing at near supersonic speed and carving a deadly trajectory. Their inertial guidance systems, paired with GPS, corrected every tiny deviation, locking the path with absolute precision. Each second, they recalculated, adjusted, and drove themselves unerringly toward a single target, the FSB headquarters in Glovo. That bombing run echoed a classic Cold War tactic: climb steeply, release the payload from afar, and avoid being shot down. But under today's modern air defense net, it was nothing short of a reckless gamble. Two 48 N6 missiles screamed upward, hunting the MiG-29. Yet those missiles were built to kill high-flying targets, while the MiG had already become a shadow skimming the Earth, twisting back toward Ukraine's border. It carried with it an unthinkable truth: Kiev had just struck the very heart of the FSB and lived to tell the tale. Two S-400 missiles roared into the sky, but in vain. The target had vanished below radar, hugging the ground. In less than 2 minutes, justice would come crashing down from 8,000 meters above.